Everyone, thank you so much for joining for our first ever webinar at Sereno. Yes, it's taken us 4 years to finally do one, but we will be rolling a bit more of these out in the future. We've had people request these specifically around security, so we're going to be doing a lot more of this in the future. Just so you're aware, there will be Q&A at the end. If you've got questions as we go, there's a Q&A button up the top. Put them in there. We'll review them if we've got time at the end. We have an hour to go through this today, which is quite a long time for a webinar. So if I manage to stop yapping before an hour ends, we'll give time for Q&A. If we finish early, we'll just finish early, okay? So today's presentation, I'm just going to wait for a couple more people to join. We've actually had really good uptake in the amount of people that wanted this webinar, which is wonderful news. So just going to give it a minute longer for more people to join, and then we'll kick things off. Before we get going, just those of you that don't know me, my name's Michael Johnson. I'm the director over here at Sereno IT. And although wouldn't say I'm not a technical engineer, I do know a lot when it comes to the cybersecurity side of things, and I'm the best person to sort of guide this webinar as we go. When we do ones in the future, we will be bringing other people, other specialisms into these webinars as well. There are plans for future ones that are going to drill into more of the security stuff we touch on today, but today is more of a top level overview of a lot of different areas of cybersecurity. Okay, so I think we will kick off then. Wonderful. So today's aim is really just to give you a very high level overview of what sort of security threats are coming out in the landscape that are impacting small to medium-sized businesses. Give you an understanding of how these security threats come along, how these have developed, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, but more importantly, to understand what measures and what security systems exist out there to help businesses protect themselves. One thing to bear in mind on this webinar, there are existing clients of ours, so you will be aware of some of these services and things that we're talking about, but there are also clients, or rather, hopefully future clients that are on here. So I will be talking as if we are managing it and we are your IT team, but all of these are relevant if you were going to manage them yourself if you wanted to. Okay, so the agenda today is I'm going to quickly just summarize why we've updated our security offering. We're going to go through a little bit about how security has changed over time, and specifically how the conversation within businesses has changed when it comes to cybersecurity. We're going to talk a bit about how what modern cybersecurity attacks are, and specifically how AI has increased this security risk. We're definitely talking about the adoption and security that you should and could be doing within Microsoft and Google, because that is very relevant and forms a very good layer of security. We're going to be talking about compliance. Now, this isn't how we meet regulations or any sort of thing that you have within your industry, but more about how we make sure that security is maintained and reportable and the importance of that. We're going to then be talking about how you can detect breaches and, more importantly, how you should be responding to them. We're definitely going to go into backup and the difference between backup, disaster recovery, and how that is relevant within cloud environments. Why employees and passwords are still a risk within organizations, despite all the technology we can put in place. Why devices are still a risk and why antivirus no longer cuts it. We're then going to jump into a little bit about a security operations center. So understanding how you can protect when a breach happens, how you can investigate that, and what tools and information is needed to do that. We're going to touch on briefly something called shadow IT, which is essentially unknown software being out there and the vulnerability risk of software on devices. And then at the very end, I'm going to give a very quick overview of our new cybersecurity services. I'm going to touch on these. This isn't the aim of the webinar, but it's a nice way to launch these new packages because these give context. Okay, wonderful. Let's crack on then. Sereno has been going for 4 years now as a business. Since inception, security has changed significantly over that time. It is certainly not something that stayed static. Cybersecurity attacks have become more sophisticated, especially due to our friend AI. Those things have ramped significantly, which we're going to go into. There's been a very big change in organizations moving away from in-house servers and maybe even offices to more adopting cloud-first technology, and everyone really adopting Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. There's also been this sort of compliance requirements that are increasing and increasing within a lot of different industries when we'd never seen them before. And more importantly, now there is a commercial awareness when it comes to cybersecurity. We've got customers and your clients and your partners requiring you to meet a certain cybersecurity level. And this is becoming more and more prevalent across any industry as well. And more importantly, cybersecurity is now a board level discussion point. It's no longer just, the IT guy talking about it. So there's definitely been a lot of development, not only from external pressure and additional security threats coming out, but more importantly, that commercial pressure as well. So let's say 5-10 years ago, when people spoke about cybersecurity and we were going in and talking to businesses about cybersecurity, the real question was more about what is that business's appetite to risk. It was all about whether the business owner was comfortable running a certain amount of risk, was comfortable having that sort of security in place or not. Now, this is very different. Now, security is driven not by the owner's appetite for risk, but by more external pressures. So more than ever now, we're seeing customers require you to meet certain security and data security requirements. We're seeing more and more and more due diligence questionnaires coming in of people questioning, what is your security requirement? How are you managing our data? What are your suppliers and providers doing to ensure that they are securing you? So it's more about making sure that to secure your business and to stay relevant in your industry, you need to prove this kind of trust and the security for your clients as well. This is also, there's other external pressures such as cybersecurity insurance no longer being covered under business insurance, and you needing to meet certain requirements to get a cybersecurity insurance or get discounts if you put sort of security in place. And as a result of these sort of external pressures, security is something that at a board level and a management level should be being discussed. It's no longer about risk management, although it definitely is, but it's also turns into a commercial discussion. It's how you win business. It's how you retain customers by demonstrating trust. So security and data security is becoming more and more and more relevant across all areas of the business, and it is a commercial conversation now as well. Now, I've mentioned this briefly before, but one of the biggest changes that we're seeing and that is impacting all industries now, more like a wave that we're seeing going out, is this supply chain security. Because now it's no longer about no longer just about the security that you as a business put into place. It's about how are you checking that the providers and the vendors and the suppliers you work with, how are they managing your data? How are they securing you? Because the minute you have a client and that client is working with you, they're also working with your other suppliers. And you could be liable for any security risk as a result of your suppliers. So what we're seeing now is this sort of wave traveling out, impacting impacting more and more businesses that we've seen before, because now everyone is part of someone else's security assessment. And if you're not meeting these standards or don't have your security in place, you could maybe not be applying for this, or you may not be picked as a supplier as well. So this is why this is becoming more and more and more, because there's this ongoing pressure coming from other people in your supply chain. And it's a really positive thing that we're seeing. So everyone has heard about cybersecurity. It isn't a new thing we've been talking about for decades now, but mostly what people are probably seeing and used to hearing about was back in the day, it was all about viruses. And it was about like just sort of like malware attacks and your device getting compromised. Now, not to say that those aren't still relevant. Those are attack types. They are still around. But modern security has moved on a bit from that. Modern attacks, what they're doing is more focused at compromising what's called your identity. So when we talk about your identity, it's your login details, your credentials, information that's going to allow someone to get access to other systems for more data. What they're after is more and more data. Not only is that data potentially valuable or relevant, or it's restricted IP, but that data gives more information that they can then use to personalize attacks and go out and target more people. So it's a land and expand kind of job. And they're doing this less through direct hacking and direct attacks, more through very easily done sort of social engineering attacks. You'll all be used to seeing these emails of click on this, download this. These are very easy to do. And this is what the main attacks come from. Their aim is to take over your business email, get access to cloud accounts, and compromise your supply chain and your client base from you. It's like a land and launch scenario. So again, the attacks now are based more around identity, which we'll get onto. Now is a good time to talk about our good friend AI. Now, everyone loves it. It is a fantastic tool. It's helping lots of businesses do lots of cool stuff, but it's also helping the bad guys, unfortunately. Now, AI has definitely helped create new types of attacks, bots that can go out themselves and do tasks and changes and controls without anyone being behind the wheel, essentially. But the biggest problem we've seen with AI, and the reason security attacks have become more and more and more prevalent, is because it's making this kind of these kinds of attacks faster, cheaper, and let's be honest, a lot easier. Back in the day, someone to hack a firewall or create a virus and code it and access systems and download that data, that's someone pretty technical. That's someone very well trained, their technical expertise there, and it takes a lot of time. And because these things take time, there's more time to respond to them. AI, unfortunately, is making hacking basically a business, because anyone can do it now. You can download data off the dark web. You can set up your own AI tools and bots to go off and do this stuff. It's making these small level attacks much easier. And we're seeing a huge amount of less targeted attacks, but more broad range sort of scattergun approach, but they're very personalized because of the data that AI can get now. So I'm going to walk you through a very simple scenario of a very classic attack type that we see all the time, and the impact of AI within this. So previously, we'd see, everyone knows about emails that come through and try and get you to click in, respond, download, share information, send banking details. They used to be quite easy to spot. That is changing, and it's because of AI. So now what attackers can do is they can use AI to go scrape data from all data sources across the internet. And this is publicly available information, your name, who you work for, who you work with. They're looking at your LinkedIn, your social media. They're knowing who your colleagues are, what your last roles are. There's a huge amount of information they can get very, very, very quickly within minutes now. They can then use that data to create very personalized sort of phishing and email attacks, because they know your name, they know your role, they know what you do in the business. They might even be able to see from your social media that you were on holiday recently, or your LinkedIn that you were chatting with a colleague and they know who you are. And they can also look at things like branding, and all of this is very easily available now for them to then use that to create very convincing emails and very convincing phishing attacks. The aim is what a lot of these are, is we see them posing as an employee, or then as one of your colleagues, or maybe as someone of a client of yours, and they may send you an email and it's got your name and branding, and it looks and it sounds like it's coming from you, and they'll get you to click on a link, and it looks like they're just sharing a file in SharePoint with you. And then that's going to take you to a website that looks exactly like a SharePoint Microsoft page, asking you to log in to access it. Back in the day, to create a web page like that, to get the branding right, even to host it, would take a lot of time. Now it's so easy to launch something like this on Claude, and you've got a web page within minutes. Now, what you're going to do then is you're going to log in because you think it's SharePoint and you're just trying to access a file that a colleague sent to you. You then put your login details and they are capturing your password. You are then logging in and you're authorizing yourself through multi-factor authentication. What you're actually doing at that point is they are hijacking your session, and that you are then letting them in to your Microsoft or Google environment. So it's called session hijacking. It's a way of bypassing multi-factor authentication because you are authorizing them to go in, and then they can go in at any point. So now they have access. Now, again, back in the day, once they have access, it takes time to get data to try and set up forwarding rules, to maybe send emails to your clients or make changes in Microsoft. All of that used to take time, and we had longer to respond and identify if something's gone wrong and know that there's been a breach, where now all of this can be done in seconds. They can download data, they can auto send emails, they can try and change configs. They can do a lot of this very, very quickly. So we have less time to respond to it. One of the big things that they're trying to do there is the data is valuable to them, because now that data, they ingest that data into an AI model, and that AI is going to create, again, really personalized emails for them to then send out to your clients, to your colleagues, to then infect and breach them as well. And when I say these are very personalized, they can look at your writing style. They can understand historic conversations and communications that you had and jump off the back of that. So it's all about making this as personalized as possible, because people are more likely to fall for this time and time again. And unfortunately, then, as I said, it's about them getting your colleagues and your clients' information to then breach them. It's this land and expand as quickly as possible. And as a result, as I said, AI has just made all of this so much quicker and so much easier, that as a result, we need to put additional security controls in, and we need to make more people aware of this sort of thing to identify them. In the same way that I spoke about previously, previously people used to be in an office. They used to be behind a firewall, and network security was a very big thing we spoke about. And then it was all about securing that company device. Now, a lot of companies aren't in offices. They're working all over the place, and they're mainly on cloud environments. So as a result, the new perimeter of security isn't your office network with your server and firewall and all of this in there. Your security perimeter is actually like your cloud environment and your cloud identity. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, because these things, they hold a huge amount of information, a lot of data, even just Teams chats, emails, all your data and drives, maybe other information about business applications and customer information. So the identity and your cloud environment has now become the new perimeter. Now, there's an ongoing thing at the moment, which is about how your cloud identity, so your Microsoft account or your Google account, how you make that what's called like your core identity. We talk about centralized management. What we mean by that is basically you lock your Microsoft and Google accounts down as much as you can, but then you use those as a login to other applications. Now, this is really powerful and it's a very secure, good idea to do, because then you only have one identity, one login to secure and manage as best as you can. It means that you don't have all these other login identities in all your other cloud systems that you then need to try and manage and secure. It also means that people aren't using, silly weak passwords everywhere, or don't have multi-factor authentication in place, or when someone leaves the company, you're not removing them from systems. Instead, you remove them from Microsoft and they can no longer log into all your other systems. So leveraging Microsoft or Google as your main cloud identity is a brilliant thing to do. But as a result, it obviously puts all your eggs in one basket. You need to make sure that if you are doing that, and there's definitely a security benefit for doing it, that you are securing that environment as much as you possibly can. So the good news is Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace provide a lot of built-in security so you can do exactly that. They are aware that people are using them as the primary identity. That's what they want. That's what it's built there for. And within their licensing, they include a huge amount of security to help you manage all of this. Some of it, obviously, it means that you probably have to go for the business premium licensing or the business plus licensing in Google, but you get a lot for that. And for an extra £6-7 a month per person, it's well worth it. These leveraging all the security you can within your Microsoft and Google is the best first step for you to really reduce risk. And what you're doing there is you're basically just trying to restrict access and make sure it's set up in the most secure way. So those of you who are existing clients of ours, your technology advisor has probably been talking to you about in Microsoft things like Intune conditional access policies, and in Google like device management and context-aware access. Now, I could do a whole presentation just focusing on these things, but at a very high level, what these basically are doing is you can set controls within your Microsoft and Google environment that basically link to devices, and they say, these are known devices. They're trusted. We have put security in place and we've checked them and they meet our security controls. Now we are going to allow this device to access our data. This is really, really important because a lot of hacks we speak about are about people breaching your login details, getting your credentials, getting access. When they're doing that, if they've got your login details and they bypass your multi-factor authentication, they're very rarely doing that from your laptop. What they're doing it from is their laptop somewhere else. So if we have a really easy way of just going, only devices on the list that meet a security requirement can access the data, not only can we prevent those devices getting access, so it cuts the likelihood of hacking down significantly, but we ensure that all of your business devices that are accessing it maintain a security standard. They have antivirus, they have encryption, they have strong passwords, they're up to date. These are all important things because even business devices could introduce risk if the security on them isn't maintained. So a lot of this is about access policies, but it's you linking your devices to your Microsoft or Google environment and then setting up these policies. These are obviously complicated things. You've got to set them up in the background. There are also about 100+ other what are called configurations within the back end of Microsoft and the back end of Google, which you can turn on or turn off to better secure your environment. Most people aren't even aware of them. You could probably turn on 80% of them and they'd make no impact to the rest of your team. No one would even know. But all of them represent a potential root or a potential risk. So because of that, there's a huge amount within these tenancies that to keep them secure, they need to be managed very carefully. This is why, because people are aware of trying to manage these things at scale and reliably, there's these new services that have come out. And what it's called is it's all about tenancy hardening. So what these do is they make sure that not only are these all the policies and all the controls, they're in place. We essentially create a template, a baseline, and we apply that to your Microsoft tenancy. So now we know that everything turned on that should be and everything turned off that should be is in place without a doubt. We then monitor what's called drift, because these configs and these policies and things, they can get changed. This could be human error, could be accidental when setting up a new starter. It could be for a very legitimate reason. Maybe for whatever reason, we need to temporarily remove multi-factor authentication. When is that getting turned back on? Is anyone checking to make sure it gets turned back on? But it could also be for malicious reasons. If a hacker gets access to your tenancy, one of the first things they're doing is turning stuff off to make access easier so they can do more stuff. So we need a tool that can not only apply the right controls, but it can alert if anything is changed. Now, some of these alerts can just be turned back on, but other alerts need investigation to go, wait, is there a service request that for a reason for us doing that or not? And that's why these things need to be run through our service desk to make sure that we're not just turning stuff back on again when there's a viable reason for it. But what this is about is ensuring that all the right controls are in place, ensuring that we know if there's any drift, and then having remediation in place and being able to report to prove that everything actually is in place. And this is like security compliance. And this is becoming more and more and more prevalent because some of the biggest risks we see are because Microsoft and Google environments are set up badly. And it happens a lot. Now, a lot of the things that I've just been yapping on at you about are preventative controls. It's all about how we prevent someone getting access to your Microsoft or Google environment. However, we could put loads and loads of controls in. Nothing is bulletproof now, unfortunately. And now security has changed from if I get hacked to the approach you should be taking is when I get hacked and when I have a breach, unfortunately. And that's why not only do we want preventative controls in place, but we need something that is going to detect if you have been breached. Now, before, you wouldn't know if your email account or your Microsoft account has been breached unless someone notices. Maybe a client goes, why have you sent me this email? Or you notice you've sent out a massive bulk email, or you notice files have been downloaded or deleted. We're waiting on someone to realize that. And that is not a good approach because so much could have happened in that time period. Instead, there's services in place now that are called managed threat detection or managed detection and response. These are a 24/7 security service. What these are doing is they are basically monitoring behavior within your Google or Microsoft environment. They're looking at known malicious behavior that happens. And so, for example, if lots of data is downloaded, if someone's logged in from another country, if data's been encrypted, if someone's tried to elevate their privileges to admin, these are all things that twig and they go, that isn't normal user behavior. Let's alert that. Let's investigate it. If it's obvious malicious attack, let's close that account down. Let's take immediate response. However, there's some behavior like that that could be legitimate. So that needs to be investigated. So that goes to a 24/7 security expert who is investigating and drilling down into this and looking at logs and going, is that legit or not? If they can take action, or if it needs further communication with yourselves or asking a client, they would come to us and we would come to you. So it goes beyond like the standard prevention. This is about making sure that we can identify that when we've got a breach, we can respond to that, take remedial action, and investigate how that got there so we know how to prevent it in the future. So this is called managed threat detection or managed detection and response. There's a common misconception, which I understand why, but is that if my data and my systems are in the cloud, they are backed up. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. Without going into the technicalities of it, it's easy for me to just say one thing, which is Microsoft in their T's and C's recommend you have a third-party backup. Unfortunately, now your Microsoft and your Google tenancy can have data deleted. Maybe that's a malicious employee or whether that's an attack, but data can be deleted and you may not notice for a very long time. By the time you do, that's potentially gone. You can also have your tenancy could get deleted. It could get lost. Your whole tenancy could get encrypted as well. So although it's still, the data's there, you can't do anything with it. So unfortunately, when it comes to using cloud environments, they're brilliant. They give reliability, they give uptime. They're far better than in-house servers. But you do still need a backup of that data. Now, backups come in different shapes and sizes. There's something called a data backup, where you would generally have a retention of all data for a year or maybe unlimited. And that is all of your emails. It's all of your files in OneDrive, SharePoint, Google Drive. It's all of your chat history. So you've got that data, and that's probably the most valuable thing to your business, and we need to back that up as a minimum. However, if you're looking at doing a disaster recovery test and understanding worst case scenario, our Microsoft or Google environment's gone. Great, we've got the data, wonderful. But what about all the other things in your tenancy? What about, how do we know who's meant to have access to what and what permission on that data? What about people's user profiles? What about all those settings we just spoke about, all those configurations and conditional access policies and all of that? What we need to do is create a new environment and rebuild all of that from scratch. That's days of work. So it's potentially days of downtime in a real disaster scenario that we're not prepared for. So that's why you need a tenancy configuration backup. So backing up absolutely everything, not just data. So there are two different types. These are now packaged into our new security offering, but it's worth considering. A lot of companies now are doing disaster recovery testing and really focusing on DR. Your cloud environments need to be part of that now. We've spoken a lot about technology and cloud environments and stuff, but people and all of your employees are still one of the biggest risks to your business. We can see this because a lot of attacks, like we've spoken about earlier, social engineering and these kind of emails, they're not targeting your systems, they're targeting your people because they are the biggest risk, unfortunately. And the only way to address this is by education. And everyone moans a bit about it, no one likes it, but it is the best and only way to make sure that people are trained so they can actually identify security risks. If you're trained, these become easier and easier to identify, flag, or just ignore and don't take the action that you need to. But having someone like me stand up once a year and bore the hell out of your staff talking about security just isn't effective. The best way to do this, and this has been reported on time and time again, is regular, small, constant training. This keeps it top of mind, but it also creates, and what all companies should look to create, is a security culture. That everyone is aware of it and your whole team are there to help protect. Because by training your staff, you not only help protect them, but you help them protect your business. So the best way to do it, we do it with online training. It's like 10, 15-minute interactive video with a little test at the end once every 4 to 6 weeks. And then you send out fake phishing emails to reinforce that training and identify if anyone in the company maybe needs a little bit more education. So no one likes it, but it's really important. And we are seeing this come in through loads and loads of security due diligence questionnaires of how are you training your employees. It is a cyber essentials requirement now, but more and more just going, yeah, we send something around once a year. It's not going to cut it much longer. Now, people are also the reason why passwords are a very big problem. Nowadays, there's a password for everything. Everyone has an app, everyone has a portal. For a business, you've probably got 20 applications and systems and stuff that you need to log into. No one can possibly remember all the passwords for those, and they don't. So as a result, people reuse passwords, or they use examples or continuations of those passwords, different versions of them. So maybe you'll have umbrella as one, and then the next one is umbrella 1, and then it's umbrella 1 2, then it's umbrella 1 2 3. This is common practice. It does happen. And unfortunately now, a very, very easy way that hackers are using to get these login details is they will find, let's say, your email account, and they'll find a password related to that. And that could be your Sainsbury's shopping account, because Sainsbury's got breached like the other year. So maybe they look at that and they go, that password's umbrella. And then they'll use an AI model to try loads of different variations of that across all known business systems to try and get in. It's called a brute force attack, and that generally happens. Unfortunately, also a very easy way for that breaches happen is when people leave organizations, you're not going around removing their logins and deactivating their accounts from all these systems. Or malicious employees, when they leave and they're unhappy, they still have access to business data and business systems. So passwords are still remain a very, very important part about your security. And this is all around making sure you don't have unauthorized access. This is why password managers, which I'm sure you're all aware of, they used to be like a nice to have. They were pretty good. But now they're really like a business essential because people are using so many systems. Password managers help in a couple of ways. Firstly, they suggest and sometimes enforce that you use complex passwords, like 16 characters of gobbledygook. That's great because no one can ever guess that. And it's very complex. No one can hack it, but no one's going to remember that either, which is good. It will then input that password for you, so you don't need to remember it. So no one is using silly passwords because they're not remembering anything. It also allows you to, when someone leaves the organization, you remove their password manager. They don't have access to any of your systems now, and they're not going to remember those passwords because they're really complex and gobbledygook. But what it is also doing is if you're sharing passwords, every organization shares passwords. And it's okay, you have a system, multiple people need to access it, you have a shared login. But if someone leaves, how are you updating that? In this system, you would update it in one place and it updates it for everyone. And they're probably not even aware that it's been updated. So these are a really, really good way of just making that sort of like your password hygiene is also kept up to date as well. And Cyber Essentials locks onto a lot of this stuff around user access control. And password managers are a really good way to identify if a password has been breached. You know, if they can link into something called dark web scanning, they can go, your email and this password have been identified on the dark web. So we know people are aware of these, change that password now. So this sort of hygiene around passwords is just like invaluable now. Judging from time, I'm not going to go into this too much, but perfect example is if an employee leaves on bad terms, you remove their password manager. Those passwords they've been using have been really complex, so they can't remember them. It's also been putting passwords in for them, so they've never had to remember them or write them down. They now have no access to systems. And just in case, maybe there's a password that everyone uses to access something, you update it in one place and it will update it everywhere for you. And that manager now has ownership of all that person's passwords, so they can access the systems and remove their access if they need to. So it's a very powerful thing. I highly, highly recommend. I said right at the beginning, the old types of attacks focused on firewalls and perimeters and devices. Now, that isn't to say that devices don't matter. Device level security is still as important because devices are the way that you can get access to other systems. They're also a way that data can be taken from devices, emails and files are synced to a machine, and even things like logging keystrokes can give passwords and help people get credentials. So device security is still relevant and is still important. I mentioned earlier about how if you can link your Google and your Microsoft account to your devices, we can then say and ensure that those devices are meeting a certain security standard. Now, what this is generally called is like device or endpoint management. You can use Microsoft and Google environments, usually within the licensing that you're already paying for, to enforce a lot of security controls on your devices. In a basic way, this is ensuring there's a strong password when they log in, making sure there's a screen lockout policy, making sure that USB ports are managed, making sure that software doesn't just auto run when it applies. There's loads and loads and loads of like standard sort of baseline security controls that you can just put on your machine and make sure that they're always in place at any point. So highly recommend that you look at these sort of device level controls. Other kind of controls that you put into place on a machine to help a more preventative level security is encrypting hard drives, managing USB ports. These are all part of what's called data leakage prevention, and making sure devices are encrypted so data can't be stolen from lost devices, and making sure you can remote wipe a device should it be lost or stolen are just general best practice device management controls that you should be leveraging Microsoft and Google for. So again, anything we can use Microsoft and Google for that is there and it's doing the best thing, we certainly will. Unfortunately, that isn't enough at a device level. And back in the day, people would go, well, I'll just put antivirus on there. Antivirus isn't going to cut it for you anymore, unfortunately. We spoke about how AI is generating new versions of viruses and malware within seconds now. Antivirus used to just have a list and it goes, here's my list of naughties. I'm going to check a machine. Is there a naughty on there? There is. Right, I'm going to remove it. It can't keep up with that list anymore. So antivirus isn't effective. Now, there's other security controls at a device level that we'd recommend putting in, but the premium level of security now is what we spoke about within Microsoft and Google, is this managed threat detection and response. It's exactly the same thing. It's looking at behavior that's happening on that machine. It's testing that things like the software that is installed on that machine, is that actually doing what it's meant to be doing, or has that been compromised, has been using to do something else? So it's really going into all areas of your device and really looking at the behavior that's going on, identifying the threat, again, raising it to a 24/7 security team who are investigating and remediating. We need the same level of threat detection at Microsoft and Google as we do on a device level. Now, there's one step further. It's all well and good us having managed threat detection in place, which is, when a threat happens, they look at logs and they investigate and they try and understand how it came in. But what they need to do that is something called logs or system logs. You get logs in Microsoft and Google, and you get logs on devices. They're basically showing everything that's going on. That the investigation that you can do is only as good as the amount of data logs that you have to look at it. So what we say is you need something on top of managed threat detection. You need security event monitoring. It's basically retention of all those system logs for at least a year. Because what you're giving then is you're giving your security team so much more data, so much more visibility to properly investigate and understand how these attacks actually got access and put a stop to it. Which is why in our new packages, we've lumped managed detection response with event monitoring, because we think that you need that bigger data set to give that team the data that they need to do their jobs effectively. Okay, last security thing, you'll be glad to know I've really hammered you with this. You're going to be so amazing at security after this. But there's something called shadow IT. This is all about unknown software and applications being out there on all of your devices with your team using them. Again, there's a whole other aspect talking about shadow IT and how we restrict that. But one very important point is all of these softwares, all bits of software, all applications that you're using on your machines, they are now being used as a way to access your device and exploit that. So software and apps are being hacked, and then they're being used as a way into your IT environment. What you need is a way to identify if these softwares have had what's called a vulnerability, and if they have had a vulnerability, it to be alerted on, and for updates and remediation to be done on them. Now, most IT companies will be doing operating system updates to make sure that this is being done on your operating system. But you need specialist tools to be able to do this across all software applications on all machines. So this is where software vulnerability management comes in. It's having a tool, identifying vulnerabilities on all software, flagging that, remediating it within a certain amount of time. And if there isn't a security update or a patch or anything like that to do remediation, giving you the option, telling you what the risk is, and if we need to, removing that software from all devices with a click of a button. So again, this is something that we're seeing more and more. In Cyber Essentials, the requirement is that you are identifying all critical vulnerabilities across all software, and you're remediating them within 14 days. So the big question now is, how are you doing that? And how do you prove that you're doing that? Which is why we've had to put software vulnerability in now. Okay, I've been talking at you for 48 minutes now. Hopefully you're all absolutely loving this and are still really engaged. I have thrown a lot of security stuff at you. This is hopefully a really easy way to bring it all together, conceptualize it, and kind of understand it. I call it the secure the building idea, and it helps me think about it. So the analogy I'm going to use is that this is about your IT environment is a building that we're looking to secure. So if that's the case, antivirus and viral detection, that's the same as a receptionist with a list, ensuring that people coming into the building are the right people and that they're not criminals and that they're not the wrong people. They're on the list. Cool. The next step is those device security controls I spoke about. So encrypting hard drives, putting USB ports under control, remote wipe, that kind of thing. That is the same as making sure all the doors are locked, that the people coming in the building can only access the areas they're meant to, that all your filing cabinets are locked down as well. We then have the vulnerability scanning that I just spoke about, so software vulnerability scanning. That's basically just doing standard checks to make sure that no locks are broken, no windows are smashed, that no one can get through faulty doors and get access into the building. We then have advanced endpoint protection, which is that behavioral sort of security on a device. That is security cameras. It's looking at where are those people going? Are they actually going to where they're meant to go? And are they behaving well or not? We then have this managed threat detection and that 24/7 security team. That's like your high-tech security team behind these monitoring cameras round the clock 24/7. And they're also investigating potentially malicious things. Why is that guy just gone and put something in that bin over there? What's going on? And then you have security event monitoring. That's your security logbook. That's allowing your team to see what's happened historically and go, when that guy last entered the building, he also put something in the bin. Maybe that's suspicious. We should investigate it. Hopefully that helps. That's what helps me think about it. It's like a building. These are all the levels. Unfortunately, security is a layered approach, and all the old threats that we used to protect against, they're still relevant. We're just adding more to it, unfortunately. And it isn't, you can't just put one thing in and it will protect everything. Hopefully today's shown you that we need to put a lot of different areas, a lot of different services and a lot of different controls in place, and they all need managing effectively. Which nicely brings me on to our security packages. I'm not going to dwell on this too quickly. Existing clients, your technology advisors are going to be talking to you about these. Any new clients, reach out, we'll have a chat about them. The aim of these packages, like our last ones, is to make it really easy to see what you have, what you could have, what the risk is that you're protecting against, and putting this all together. The pricing is nice and simple. And honestly, if you went direct to try and buy these things yourself, you'd be paying at least double. So they're genuinely very, very well priced. And what we've done, because this was a request from clients, is if you go for the standard option on both of these, you're meeting and maintaining not only cybersecurity requirements, but cybersecurity recommendations as well. Cyber essentials requirements and recommendations. So the government standard for what all businesses should have in place and what they recommend. So we've made that hopefully even easier for people. Wonderful. As I said, there's no immediate action. Technology advisors will be talking to you. Existing clients, if you don't want to wait, please reach out. And any new clients, please come talk to us. We'll speak to you all about security packages and we can go through it all. Now, I'm hoping that we have some questions to do a quick Q&A. So we've got 7 minutes left. Not too bad, actually. All right, let me have a look at the Q&A. Okay, you haven't mentioned about the security risk of using AI within a business. Will this be a future webinar? Yes, very, very good point. How you're using AI, what you're giving it access to, what your governance controls are and policies and usage policy, very, very important, does represent a risk. We have very recently just got a head of AI automation integration, and we will be doing a webinar, hopefully in the next couple months, specifically on this, and be offering that to clients as a standalone offering as well. Are the packages replacing our current security packages? Will we lose any security services as a result? So these packages will be replacing the old packages, but they include everything that you previously had. These are an evolution of those packages, just adding more stuff on, because as you've hopefully learned, security has developed. We've just had to add more and more stuff on, but we're not replacing the old one, basically. Does applying security baselines on our Microsoft 365 tenancy cause disruption to our team or prevent us being able to do everything we currently do? So when we spoke about this tenancy hardening, applying a baseline, turning on all the good stuff that we need to keep you secure, there's over 100 things that we need to do there. 90% of them, you'll have no impact. You'll not know about. There's no impact if we do it silently. When we are rolling them out, we will have a consultancy call to basically go, here are, I think it's about 8 or 9 things that we need your decision on because they will make an impact and they could have an impact on you. So we'll be very clear about this. You can take our advice and do everything, or we can, tailor them to what you need. Given the risks of putting all eggs into one basket by using Microsoft to access other apps and systems, is it still the right thing to do? Good question. My answer is yes. I would. My view is yes. By using Microsoft for all your data and to access other applications and systems, it could be seen as a risk. But in my view, it's more of a risk to try and manage access to all those other systems and all those other systems. It's too much management, and staying on top of all of that just leads to more and more security risk. If you have it under one area, that we've got all the right security baselines, we've got tenancy hardening in there, we've got all the conditional access policies, it's locked down as much as humanly possible. And then you have managed threat detection on top. Like that's the best way of managing this, I'd say. We got one more. But please, could you circulate slides after the meeting? There are a few things I'd like to show the team. Definitely more than happy to send these round. We'll also be sending around the recording and transcription of this as well. And you mentioned Cyber Essentials suggestions / recommendations a few times. Is there a difference, and what constitutes as a pass or fail? Right, so when it comes to Cyber Essentials certification itself, for those of you that don't know, it's a government standard recommendation, basically. The first Cyber Essentials itself it can be done a self-assessment. It's just you saying you're doing these things. You could lie. There's no proof. It's not tested. It's not audited. Cyber Essentials Plus, however, is audited. You've got to prove how you're doing this. So there is a difference when it comes to Cyber Essentials in there are requirements for Cyber Essentials, and then there's also suggestions. The approach that we take if we're taking a client through Cyber Essentials is not only do we want to do the requirements, we have to do the requirements, but recommendations are there for a reason. So let's try and do those if they're reasonable. And a lot of them are, they're very reasonable things. But for us, Cyber Essentials is about not only ticking a box and passing that once a year, it's about putting the right technical controls and systems in place to maintain that level of security throughout the year. Because if you're telling your clients that you're Cyber Essentials certified and you're complying with it, and then you have a breach that impacts them, you could be liable because you're not maintaining that standard. So we are pretty hardcore about it, but that's our approach. All right, we'll do one more. Is there an installation cost to put these new security packages in place? Wonderful one to end on. Yes, unfortunately, new services mean new installation time. So there will be install costs to get all these things in place. A lot of them will need some consultation with you to make sure you're happy with the controls because they can be tailored to your requirement. But yes, there is an install. And sorry to any new clients, but we're offering a discount to existing clients on the installation though, because our aim is that we want our existing clients to have this option and preferably to take this stuff up as quickly as we can because it's the best security. This is what the market's doing now. So there are some discounts for our existing clients. Okay, we're 1 minute to go. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully it hasn't been too boring and I haven't spoken too quick. If you have questions off the back of this, you can reach out to me as well. But thank you so much for your time. We'll send the slides, we'll send a recording, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.